What's up, gamers? Dreamcastguy here, talking today about Diablo II Resurrected, because this weekend, Blizzard gave me access to the closed alpha test. This allowed me to play basically the first half of the game, both Acts 1 and 2, and test out the Amazon Barbarian and Sorcerer's classes. So this was actually a pretty substantial chunk of the game itself, and I tried to do everything. I ran around, I leveled up, I tried to break into glitches and stuff, and the game is surprisingly tight. We don't have a release date for this, we have no idea when it's actually coming out, but even as it stands, this early build of it is incredibly good. But there are just some tiny things in this that have me a bit worried. Now let's talk about what Diablo II Resurrected is. This is technically not a remake, it's more just a really fancy remaster. This is the original game with the leveling systems, the talent trees, the gearing. It is everything that made this game just as fun and addictive and difficult as it was all those years ago, but there is some tiny tweaks when it comes to the visuals and also some technical aspects. Now, of course, we need to begin things properly by just acknowledging the fact that these graphics, these remastered visuals, are completely insane. Like, I'm not sure if Blizzard decided to sell their souls to the devil, but this is such a crazy, gigantic leap in the graphics themselves. But what's kind of interesting about this is that technically, these new visuals are playing on top of the original game. The developers have stated the fact that you can technically switch back and forth between these two visual styles, the new stuff and the classic look, whenever you want. And I even decided to do it a couple times, going back and forth. And while I was doing this, you notice the fact that the added layer of detail is completely staggering at times. Let me show you a specific example as to just how big and really how different this visual leap actually is. So this is the maggot layer. You basically are going through this under desert catacombs. It's got all these goofy, gooey bugs and stuff. Well, while you're here, look at this. Going back and forth, the original versions of this, it was just some sandy tunnels. You know, you go back and forth, you fight some stuff, and it definitely didn't look bad, but now they've added in this goopy gore. They managed to make this extra layer of detail that seems to add to the world itself. Now, I did this a lot. I enjoyed flipping back and forth between the graphics to see the updates, but I do want to try and just be brutally honest in this video, because I am a Diablo lover, that at times, these new visuals are a bit harder to understand. Like, sometimes when you're in the dark especially, like during the daytime, when I'm just going in places that have big torches or the sun's out or something, everything clearly looks better in these remastered visuals because obviously you can see all the big differences. But at night, or whenever you're in the very, very particularly dark spots of some of these dungeons and stuff, I found myself flipping back to the original graphics because I feel like the hard edges, the clunkiness, the jaggedness at times, the simplistic art is easier to understand in this darkness. It seems as if maybe they went a bit too far with trying to make things look too realistic, like the red skeletons and stuff. In the classic version, they're actually red, whereas in this new version, when you're fighting the red skeletons, they're kind of just a pinkish beige, and it makes it where they don't stand out as clearly in the darkness. It makes me hope that they can manage to tweak or update the graphics engine a bit to make it so that everything is still easy to understand, and I'm not just constantly flipping back and forth between old school and new school depending on how bright it is. Now, moving past the visuals themselves, let's go a bit into the gameplay and why this game is just so incredibly fun. Like, it kind of blew me away. I've played a bunch of Diablo, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours, but I've always thought that Diablo 2 was definitely the pinnacle of the series. A lot of the fans think this, but I was always kind of curious how it would age, because sometimes there are those games that you go back to that, even if they look fantastic in your memories, they don't play as good as you might have remembered. Well, Diablo 2, this is the original game, just completely baked into the DNA, and honestly, it is fantastic. When I'm doing something like playing as my barbarian who's named Subscribe and trying to chop people up with my axe mastery, or my specific favorite was playing as the Amazon and doing the Boazon spec, which is basically where you go into the talent trees, and every time you level up, you only put more of your talents into making your bow bigger and deadlier, and making it so every single shot costs you no mana and can pierce targets and stuff. stuff. Leveling this up, getting new gear, putting different sockets and stuff into all my armor, it's simply jaw-dropping to me that this game still manages to play as well as it did all those decades past. It is still just as polished and pristine and freaking tight as it was decades ago. Like, one of my favorite memories with this game is that I used to have this really religious neighbor kid. His parents made him pray all day every day and stuff, and he was only allowed to play Diablo because I guarantee you, I'm actually serious about this, his parents said, well, at least you're fighting the devil. Like, it's so funny that this game manages to still be as good as it was back then. But we need to talk about the interesting added elements, the thing that completely changes this game that I think is going to be perhaps the most controversial aspects when it finally gets released, which is controller support. Now, when this game came out originally, it was obviously just only on the PC. That means it only had the mouse and keyboard support. You clicked to shoot your attacks, you'd press F1 through F5 to use your different special abilities, 1 through 5 would be your potions. It was a very, very easy to understand experience because you had just so many buttons on it. Well, one of the things they're doing today is that they're going to be making it so you can play this with a controller because Diablo II Resurrected is coming to consoles. Well, in this alpha test, they allowed you to test that. I decided to plug in an Xbox controller and run around with it. And what's weird is that it works, but it feels very different. The targeting itself feels much more like an auto-lock system, where you just vaguely point in the direction of an enemy, and whenever you press attack, it goes off properly. But the other weird part of this is the fact that you can't just have so many hotkeys, because this game is typically, if you've never played Diablo 2, it's pretty much a two-button game. You have a primary attack and a secondary attack, but when you're playing on an Xbox controller, you can have like 6 primary attacks. So I could make fire arrows, magic arrows, my multi-shot. I could put everything on the bar at once. And I do think that, in a weird way, if people get really, really good at this game, when it comes to the player versus player combats, I do think that, in a way, there might be some players who are infinitely better when playing on an Xbox controller or with a controller in their hand than a PC player could ever be. I mean, we'll see how it actually shakes out, but in this early version of it, I'm very, very curious how it gets balanced, because this, I don't know, I'm excited to see, because personally I plan on playing this on a PlayStation. I'm curious to see how it functions in the final version of the game, but right now it seems like the controller is almost too good. At least that's the way it feels to me. Now, even as I say that, as you can tell by this gameplay, I 99% played with keyboard and mouse still, but that's just kind of out of habit. So in this video thus far, I've definitely been very, very positive. I think the changes they've made to the controls, the tweaks they've made, the quality of life updates, and of course the very beautiful graphics, these are all some very positive parts, but there is something in this that needs to be fixed, and it is something that could actually break the experience for some people, which is called the load time problem. Now, basically what happens is, this is a very raw early version of the game, so there is some extended load screens. When you're trying to teleport, when you're going through doorways, there is this short loading screen that pops up, but here is the problem that is actually hurting the experience. Now, typically the way this game used to work is that it would load the environment and then load your character, meaning that whenever you came off of the load screen, you were instantly able to fight. You just had to turn and shoot. Well, now they have done things backwards. What happens is your character is seemingly just instantly moved to the new area, and then it loads it afterward, which means that there are times where if an enemy is next to a doorway or standing on a teleport pad, you are getting hit for a lot of damage before you can even see. Now, let's face this, currently we're playing this on normal difficulty. You can't actually unlock the harder nightmare, you can't unlock into the crazy difficulties and stuff until after you finish the game, which is not available in this early access build. But what I'm worried about is what happens when they have this in the finalized version of the game. What if I'm playing a hardcore character, which is the special heroes where if they die, they get deleted? What happens if I'm playing on hard, I go through one of these checkpoints and I'm murdered before I can press a freaking button? I actually think that this is a very big issue. Even with players that have the solid state hard drive, or somebody like me who's probably going to be playing on a PS5, it makes me nervous of a character dying because I am unable to defend myself or even chug a potion before I'm inevitably dead. This is one of those things that I feel like is a systematic issue that needs more than an update. This is a fundamental change that I hope they make to the game itself, which is load the map and then my character and not the other way around. Okay, so this has just been some off-the-cuff thoughts. I've really enjoyed the game. I'm very, very happy I got a chance to play it, and I just want to say that this is a game that, if it released right now, I would definitely rush out and buy it. This experience has been so freaking fun. It's been so nice going back and battling the demons once again, and I have to say that this is a game that's really kind of an encapsulation of why 90s games are so loved. This is more than just nostalgia. This is a valid game, and definitely an adventure that's worth trying again whenever it eventually comes out. But what did you think about it? Did you get a chance to play any of this? Were you in the alpha test yourself, or did you watch some live streams? Tell me some of your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all, and keep dreaming. You know what I just randomly want to say here is that this game is kind of easier than I remember, but mostly because when I played this as a kid, I was getting completely mowed down by random freaking Rakanichu and stuff. So it's nice that this game, maybe it's just that I'm more adult, I'm more freaking experienced in my years, I've beaten so many games now, I'm more prepared for these mechanics, but it's nice to go back and get all these juicy kills. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.